Hello, St. Francis, Minnesota, from Washington, D.C. My name is Paul Arneson, and I'll be coming to see you in July to talk about a book I've written entitled I Closed Too Many Eyes. It's about a World War II medic from a small town in southern Minnesota called Mountain Lake. Now, I'll tell you more about him and his experiences during the war, but I'd like you to circle Friday, July 26th from 12:30 to around 2 o'clock in the afternoon for my presentation and book signing. It's going to be held at the St. Francis High School in the Saints Room, and that's at 3325 Bridge Street Northwest in St. Francis. So let's talk a little bit about the book and why you should join me in July. The book tells the story of Bear Nonan Ross, who was one of five offspring born to John and Lily Ross. While John and Lily immigrated from Sweden early in the 1900s, their children were all born in Minnesota, and Bear was the second oldest. He was born in 1917. In 1927, John opened the dry cleaning and tailoring shop in Mountain Lake, and the family ran that business for over 40 years. The book details life for the Ross family before Pearl Harbor and the huge changes created by the war. Three of the four boys were called up to serve. There were several things that made Bear's story very unique. So let me discuss some of those briefly. By the way, the page displayed on the calendar at the bottom photo taken in the dry cleaner shop reads January 1941. A year later, Bear and his brothers Arthur and Donald would be preparing to leave for the war. The back cover of the book has a few parts. The top of the book shows his ID card, and then a little summary of his life, and finally a brief description of my Air Force career. And in the circle, it lists my website and blog site where you can find the contact page there to email me with any questions or comments you may have. So, what makes Bear's World War II experience so amazing? And why did I write the book? Well, first of all, Bear's time in uniform lasted from just a few months after Pearl Harbor to many weeks after the European war had concluded. After training for the Medical Corps in Texas, he was sent to England and then went on a first mission to North Africa to help clear the Germans and Italians from the coastal countries. But then he was shipped to Sicily for the same task, then back to England for amphibious landing practice, and then to the coast of France for the D-Day invasion. Following which, he and his 16th Infantry Regiment slogged through France and Belgium and Germany, and finally Czechoslovakia, where they liberated a concentration camp at Falkenau. He finally got back to Mountain Lake just before Christmas of 1945. He returned with a Purple Heart and the award of the Bronze Star with one oak leaf cluster. The second thing that makes Bear's wartime experience so unique was the fact that he wrote to his family so often, and they kept every letter. I had access to all of them. He was also an avid journal writer and kept track of his almost every move for the entire war. The book has many of Bear's letters in it. Here's an example of one that's been redacted. You can tell by the censors. They would blacken out anything that they didn't want sent back to the States. And it's a V-mail letter. You might have heard of those. They were a way of saving weight of letters coming back and forth from the States to the war zone. They microfished the letters and sent them to the post offices for letting people know who they were written to come and get a paper copy of the microfished letter. It's kind of an interesting event that occurred there during the war. And then this photo, it's a kind of a famous photo. You see it in many, many books on World War II. And I had it analyzed by a photo interpreter at Quantico, and that picture, the arrow shows Bear. That is Bear in a landing craft just ready to hit the beach at North Africa there in 1942. So please join me on July 26th at 12:30 at the St. Francis High School. One thing I want to offer attendees is any help that you may need to figure out how to write and self-publish a book of your own. I'll be more than happy to communicate with you by phone or snail mail, email, to give you advice based on my experiences. So hope to see you in July. Thanks.